Daniel thought he knew everything about the twin boys he adopted and raised as his own. But one day, a sealed envelope forced him to face a truth he never expected, a truth buried for years. What he found inside shook him to his core and changed everything about the life he thought he had built. Stay with us to uncover what was hidden all along, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Daniel Brooks thought he knew everything about the two boys he had raised with unshakable love. In the quiet town of Rosewood Hill, everyone knew him as the single white man who'd adopted twin black boys and never looked back. He never cared what people whispered behind his back. He ignored the stares, the passive-aggressive remarks, the awkward questions. Daniel had only one focus: Noah and Tobias, his sons, his entire world. He remembered the day he brought them home as infants, wrapped in donated blankets, their cries echoing in his heart. No family history, no blood ties, just a promise to love them for life. And he kept that promise. Every day. Without question. But one call from the school shattered everything. Tobias had collapsed during recess. His teacher, Ms. Bennett, called in a panic. Daniel raced to the hospital, heart pounding, hands shaking. When he arrived, the doctors had stabilized Tobias, but they needed more medical history. Family genetics. Any detail that could explain why a healthy boy had suddenly gone still. Daniel had nothing. The adoption had been closed. He was never told who the birth parents were. And he never asked. Until now. With his son lying unconscious, Daniel found himself signing court documents to access the sealed birth certificate. When the certificate arrived, he didn't want to look. He told himself it didn't matter. But deep down, he knew, once opened, nothing would ever be the same. The envelope sat on the edge of the hospital table, sealed, official, and heavy with truth. Daniel stared at it for hours. Just a few sheets of paper inside, but they threatened to destroy everything he thought he knew about his sons. His mind raced with questions he never dared ask before. What if the birth parents had a medical condition that explained Tobias's collapse? What if the truth made the boys feel like they never belonged to him? What if the truth changed everything? Dr. Naomi Ellis, the attending physician, approached gently. She was kind, grounded, and honest. A black woman with years of experience, and eyes that could read pain even before it was spoken. Whenever you're ready, she said softly, we can use it only for Tobias's treatment. Nothing more. Daniel nodded, but still, he couldn't do it. Instead, he slid the envelope toward her. I trust you, he whispered. Use it if you must. But I'm not ready to see it. She placed a hand over his. That's still a choice made out of love. He spent that night in a stiff plastic chair beside Tobias's bed. Monitors beeped steadily. Tubes ran to his son's tiny arm. His hand rested over Tobias's, never letting go. And in that silence, Daniel realized something terrifying. He would risk knowing the truth, but he couldn't risk losing his son. That was the moment he understood. Being a father wasn't about protecting your own heart. It was about being brave enough to shatter it for your child. 3 days passed. Tobias's condition stabilized, but no clear diagnosis came. The doctors ran tests, studied scans, and monitored vitals. Still, they found no root cause. That's when Daniel broke. He couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. He needed answers, not just for Tobias, but for himself. He walked out of the hospital room and down the quiet hallway. Dr. Ellis met him at the nurse's station. I still haven't opened it, she said. Daniel nodded slowly. I think I need to now. Back in the waiting room, with trembling hands, he tore the envelope open. Inside was a birth certificate, clean, clinical, unforgiving. And there it was. Mother's name, Serena Lane. The world stopped. That name wasn't unfamiliar. It was unforgettable. Serena, his high school sweetheart, the girl who used to scribble poetry in the margins of her notebooks. The one who made him believe in forever, before she disappeared without a goodbye. Daniel blinked, stunned. He read the name again. Same first name. Same last name. And then it hit him like a punch to the chest. Serena Lane had been the mother of the boys he raised, and no one had never told him. The hospital buzzed with quiet life around him, but he was frozen in that chair, eyes locked on Serena's name. Memories came flooding back, her laugh, her wild ideas, the long walks after school. They had loved each other like the world would never change. But it did. They were just 17 when she vanished. No goodbye. No explanation. She moved away after graduation, and Daniel had spent years wondering what happened. Eventually, he let go, or thought he had. Now, her name was printed on his son's birth certificate. His pulse pounded. The dates aligned. The age made sense. But the boys were black. Serena had been white. Just like him. So how? There was no father listed. Just donor unknown. The space beside her name was blank, like the truth had been deliberately left behind. Daniel stood up and paced. Could Serena have used a sperm donor? Was this a planned pregnancy? A secret child she never told him about? And more than that, why had she died with no family stepping forward? Why had her children, his children, now, ended up in the system, lost, and forgotten? Daniel wasn't just holding paper anymore. He was holding a ghost. And that ghost was asking him to find the truth. Daniel didn't go home that night. He sat in his car outside the hospital, the birth certificate on the dashboard, the name Serena Lane echoing in his mind like a forgotten song. The more he thought about it, the more questions surfaced. Twins, born to Serena, but placed for adoption, with no father listed and no mention of him. He had to know what happened. The next morning, he made calls, hospitals, public records, anyone who might have a thread he could follow. It wasn't easy. Closed adoptions leave very few trails. But eventually, through an old contact at a county records office, Daniel found what he was looking for. A hospital discharge record. Serena Lane gave birth to twin boys. No emergency contact listed, and one note scribbled in the file, surrogacy arrangement, private. Daniel's breath caught. A surrogacy? It wasn't what he expected. She hadn't been trying to start a family of her own, she'd been carrying someone else's. But something had clearly gone wrong. The intended parents never claimed the children. And no one from Serena's side ever came forward after she passed. There was no scandal. No public story. Just quiet paperwork, babies placed in the system, and a young woman buried with no known relatives. And now those babies were his sons. Through calls with the old hospital social worker, he pieced it together. Serena had signed on to be a surrogate for a couple desperate for a child. The arrangement was informal, no court filings, just contracts drawn up privately. A black sperm donor had been selected either by choice or mistake, but something changed after the ultrasounds. The intended parents backed out. When they saw the baby's skin tone, they walked away. The hospital tried contacting them, no response. Serena was left to carry the pregnancy to term alone, still hoping they'd return. They never did. She gave birth to Noah and Tobias. And within days, she died. No1 came. No obituary. No funeral. No closure. The boys were transferred to foster care. And years later, Daniel walked into their lives. Not by destiny. Not by magic. But by pure coincidence. Or maybe something greater. Daniel wiped a tear from his cheek. Not just from grief, but from rage. At the system. At the parents who vanished. At himself, for never searching sooner. Serena had carried life, loved in silence, and left without witness. But Daniel knew now, and he wouldn't let her story disappear again. Back in Tobias's hospital room, Daniel sat in silence, the monitor beeped steadily. His son was healing, but Daniel wasn't. Then Dr. Naomi Ellis walked in, file in hand, her expression steady, but lighter than before. "We got the final results," she said gently. Daniel stood. "Tell me." Dr. Ellis opened the chart. "Tobias has a rare blood disorder, genetic, but manageable. With the right medication and care, it won't stop him from living a full life." Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Dr. Ellis continued, "The condition is recessive. It would have been almost impossible to detect without access to his birth records. That envelope gave us what we needed." Daniel sat down slowly. All the hesitation. All the fear. And in the end, opening the birth certificate had saved his son's life. Dr. Ellis looked at him. "You did the right thing, Daniel." But Daniel shook his head. "I should have done more, sooner." The truth weighed on him, not just Serena's hidden sacrifice, but something deeper. Something harder. Noah and Tobias were black. He was not. Serena had been white. How would his sons feel when they found out their birth mother looked like him, but they didn't? Would they feel betrayed? Would they ask why she never told him? Why she died alone? Would they one day wonder if they truly belonged? Daniel's love had never been conditional. But love, he now realized, wasn't the only thing they'd need. They needed answers. They needed tools. They needed someone who could help them navigate the world as it would see them. He turned to the only person he trusted, Dr. Naomi Ellis. She listened quietly as he poured out everything, the truth about Serena, the failed surrogacy, the boy's identity, his fear of not being enough. Naomi nodded slowly. You love them, Daniel. That's clear. But loving black children means preparing them for a world that might not. He nodded. I don't know how. You learn, she said. You listen. You build their village. And that's what he did. He joined a support group for transracial adoptive parents, found mentors, and introduced his boys to black authors, history, community. He didn't try to change who he was. He changed how he showed up. Because fatherhood wasn't about comfort, it was about becoming who your children need, even when it's hard. The hospital discharged Tobias a week later. He had healed, at least physically. But Daniel knew the time had come to heal something deeper, the questions no one had ever dared to ask aloud. That evening, he sat both boys down in the living room. No TV. No background noise. Just the three of them, and a single photograph placed gently on the table. It was old. 2 teenagers. One of them, unmistakably Daniel. The other, a girl with fierce eyes and a laugh frozen in a smile. Noah leaned in, confused. That's you. Who's she? Daniel's voice was soft. Her name was Serena. And she was your birth mother. Everything stopped. Tobias blinked, stunned. She's our mom? Daniel nodded. Yes, but she's white, Noah said, the words almost stumbling out. She was, Daniel answered. So was I. Your biological father was black. Serena didn't know him. He was a donor in a private surrogacy agreement. She carried you for another couple who couldn't have children. Noah's face twisted. Then why didn't they raise us? Daniel's jaw tightened. Because when they saw you be born with dark skin, they walked away. Silence. Tobias whispered, she still carried us? Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. She did. Alone. And after you were born, she passed away. Before she ever got to hold you. Noah's voice cracked. And you knew her? Daniel looked down, then up at them both. She wasn't just someone I knew. She was someone I once loved. Long before any of this. We lost touch after high school. I never knew what happened to her. I didn't even know you were hers until the day I opened that envelope. Neither boy spoke. Noah stared at the photo. Tobias swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Noah asked. Daniel's voice broke. Because I only just found out. And because I wanted to protect you. But the truth isn't something I want to protect you from anymore. It's something I want to walk through with you. He placed a hand on each of their backs. Daniel placed a hand on each of their backs. You are my sons. Not because of a document. Not because someone gave you to me. But because every single day, I chose you. I still do. And I always will. He took a breath. But I also know you deserve more than love. You deserve truth. Identity. Pride. And I will make sure you grow up knowing who you are, and why you have every right to hold your heads high. Tobias looked at him, eyes brimming. She was part of your story. Daniel nodded. And you're the reason her story still lives. And in that moment, surrounded by memory, tears, and undeniable love, a father and his son stepped into something deeper than blood. They stepped into truth. Tobias was thriving again. Noah was asking questions. And Daniel, he wasn't just watching them grow. He was growing too. He knew love alone wasn't enough. So he started doing the work. He joined a support group for transracial adoptive parents, other moms and dads raising kids who didn't look like them, but loved them fiercely all the same. They shared mistakes, listened hard, and learned together. He found black mentors, barbers, teachers, neighbors, people Noah and Tobias could look up to and feel reflected in. He filled their bookshelf with black voices, took them to museums, let them see themselves not as exceptions, but as extensions of something powerful and proud. And he stopped pretending he had to get it all right, because being a good father wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, listening, and building a world where his sons could belong without apology. One afternoon, they sat in the hallway hanging a frame, the photo of Daniel and Serena. Below it, a small plaque. From the past came love. From love came you. That night, they laid on the grass under a blanket of stars. Do you think she sees us? Noah asked. Daniel looked at them both, eyes soft. I think she never stopped. Tobias asked, do you think she'd be proud of us? Daniel smiled. I think she already is. And I'll spend my whole life making sure you're proud too, of yourselves, of where you came from, and where you're going. Because family wasn't made by blood. It was made by truth, by effort, by showing up when it's hardest. And Daniel? He wasn't just a father anymore. He was the bridge between their past and their future. Some truths aren't meant to hurt, they're meant to heal, if we're brave enough to speak them. Daniel didn't become a father through biology. He became one through choice, sacrifice, and the courage to say, you deserve to know who you are. He could have stayed silent, but instead, he chose truth, knowing it might hurt, but also knowing it would make his sons whole. Because real love doesn't hide, it listens. It learns. It tells the truth, even when it's hard. So ask yourself, could you tell someone a truth that might change how they see you forever? Let us know in the comments below what you think and how this story resonated with you. Maybe someone out there needs to hear this today. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor love, legacy, and the families we fight to build. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.